We begin in the Middle East. Israel has begun the release of 110 Palestinian prisoners as part of the ceasefire deal agreed between Israel and Hamas. Dozens of prisoners are being handed over to Palestinian officials in the occupied West Bank. Others are headed for Egypt and beyond. Israel has agreed to free more than 1,500 jailed Palestinians in exchange for at least 33 hostages held by Hamas. Now, earlier, Hamas released 3 Israeli and 5 Thai hostages.
The latest carefully choreographed hostage release began in northern Gaza. Israeli soldier Agam Berger was filmed with Hamas militants among the ruins of Jabalia before being handed over to Red Cross officials and then rushed back to Israel to be reunited with her family. The next release was set to take place in southern Gaza, in Khan Yunis, among the rubble and the destroyed home of Hamas's killed leader, Yahya al-Sinwar. Thousands of people gathered to watch, with chaotic scenes confronting the hostages as they emerged. Hamas militants and Islamic Jihad fighters marched the hostages through the surging crowds, sometimes pushing people back. Eventually, Israelis Abel Yehud and Gadi Moses were freed. Along with 5 Thai nationals, Wachara Sriaun, Pong Saktana, Satyan Suwankam, Banawat Siatau and Surasak Lamnau. Their release was not part of the original deal between Hamas and Israel. Back in Thailand, loved ones watched as the group was handed over to Red Cross officials.
This is what we've been praying for every day. In the end, there was no warning, nothing to prepare us for this. 2 or 3 days ago, there was no sign. But when we spoke to the church clerk, they said, "It won't be long now. It won't be long before there's good news."
The hostage homecomings were broadcast in Tel Aviv too, where people packed into the so-called hostage square to see their return. Further releases are expected later this week, with more than 80 hostages still held captive in Gaza.
And for more, I'm joined now by the Palestinian journalist Hazem Balusha in Ontario, Canada. This time, Hazem, good to see you. Can you tell us more about the 110 released Palestinian prisoners? I mean, who are they, and are there some prominent figures among them?
Yes, those 110 is the third batch of Palestinian prisoners who are freed in exchange of Israeli hostages. It's some of them, they are prominent figure like Zakaria Zubeidi, who's freed today to the West Bank, is a Fatah affiliated commander who was one of those who was escaping from Israeli prison in Jalboa a while ago, along with the 6 people. There are some others who are affiliated with different factions, mainly Hamas. There is a guy called Muhammad Abu Warda, who's served life sentences in the Israeli prison and will be exiled abroad. Some other names from Jerusalem, some others from West Bank, and 9 from Gaza Strip.
Do we know exactly how the prisoners are chosen? I mean, is there a pecking order that's used when the decision is made of who to release?
Yes, both sides, Israel and Hamas, agreed on the names before signing the agreement. There was a long debate between both sides through the mediators, Qatar and Egypt. Along with the Americans, they put the names of the Palestinian prisoners and the Israeli hostages. Actually, there is a ratio they agreed upon, And according to that ratio, they put the names. Some of them they were agreed to be freed into the Palestinian territories, and some to the exile.
We know that most of the prisoners have been taken to the West Bank, but we understand that others will go to Egypt and then places beyond that. Do we know what the reason is for these different destinations?
Yes, Israel made a condition that some of those who are killed Israelis, they don't want to release them into the Palestinian territories, whether in the West Bank or Gaza Strip, and they should be deported to a third country. Mainly, they deported to Egypt as an initial hub, and then they will move to different countries according to the Hamas sources. They will be mainly Tunisia, Algeria, Qatar, and Turkey, and maybe others. So that is upon the agreement between both sides who would be released inside or abroad.
Hazem, let me ask you before we run out of time. I understand that some of the prisoners who were released, they were serving life sentences. They were convicted murderers. How do Palestinians see that?
This is not easy. The Palestinian prisoners in general is considered as heroes in the Palestinian society and community. It's important for the Palestinians, for those that is be freed. That's why Hamas is playing on that thing, that this is the price that was paid is equal to release the Palestinian prisoners. Palestinian prisoners is an effective issue, and it's was supposed to be one of the final issues that to be discussed in the peace process between the Palestinian Liberation Organization and Israel, if there was talks between both sides. So Palestinians, and we can see that clearly in the reception that the Palestinian prisoners received, whether in the West Bank and Gaza Strip today.
Journalist Hazem Balusha, we appreciate your time and your insights tonight. Hazem, thank you.
Thank you.
And for more now, I'm joined by our correspondent in Israel, Tanya Kramer. Good evening to you, Tanya. We understand that the buses carrying the prisoners is now headed for its destinations, including the West Bank. What do we know about the identities of these prisoners?
Well, we just got a statement from the prison service in Israel saying that, the release of those Palestinian detainees is concluded. They were brought to the occupied West Bank. Some were deported to Gaza, others deported to third countries, to Egypt, and from then they might be brought somewhere else. So we know, as in previous releases, that there are 110 detainees that were released this time. Some of them have had long sentences. Some were what Israel describes as security prisoners. Some of them were imprisoned during the Second Intifada, so they had been for a long time in prison for attacks, and some also for murder, but we also understand some were children there. We had also seen this in the past two releases, some of the children that are in Israeli prisons, some of them in administrative detention, which is a very controversial practice, where people are being held without charge, sometimes for many months, but also longer than that. So we understand this prisoner release of this time has now been concluded, and people have arrived there where their relatives have been also waiting all day, except of course for those who have been deported to other countries.
And how did we get to where we are right now? I mean, there were some hiccups today, right?
Well, yes, there were. I mean, we saw in the morning first release of the female soldier, Agam Berger. She was, it was a relatively quick, handover, what we see as orchestrated or staged by Hamas there in Jabalia in the north of Gaza. She was then handed over rather quickly to the International Red Cross. But there were these chaotic scenes in Khan Yunis when the Palestinian Islamic Jihad was handing over the hostages they had been holding, the two Israeli hostages, and there were also the Thai hostages. Then we heard from the Palestinian Prime Minister's office that they complained to the mediators that they don't want to see such scenes that were, posing a danger to the hostages being led to the cars from the International Red Cross through the crowds, and that they would not permit the buses containing Palestinians they're waiting to be released to depart. But that had been solved by the mediators, and later the buses then went on.
It's a situation we know that is very fragile, but what can we cautiously expect for the coming days?
We're expecting more releases of hostages. This is part of the first phase where we see all in all 33 hostages who should be released during this phase. So we saw now 2 over the past 2 weeks and today, and there will be another release of hostages in exchange for Palestinian detainees on Saturday. Again, this time we're expecting more of the elderly and injured men to be released, Israelis to be released on Saturday. There are still also some of the foreign nationals that need to be released, and we heard it in the report. They're not part of this agreement, but they're supposed to be released as well as a goodwill gesture. We just don't know when in this process this will happen. But at the same time, then it will go also soon into the negotiations for the second phase, but also we're expecting the Rafah crossing as a next element as well to open, at least for the evacuation of Palestinians from Gaza, those who have been wounded during the war. So there's one element after the next that needs to come into place. But as you said, it's a very long and fragile process.
Tanya Kramer with the latest in Jerusalem. Tanya, as always, thank you.